Welcome to Game Retail Ramblings, episode number 34. I'm your host, Travis Everns, coming to you live from Millennium Game Studios, and my producers are headed off for vacation, Rochester, New York, which is why we're coming to you live on Tuesday rather than our normal time slot, which is on Wednesday. And based on the number of people in chat, maybe this is the day. So I'm going to be excited about what sort of zesty comments you guys have for me, and the AMA, of course, afterwards, the last 30 minutes of the show. Today, we're going to talk all about distribution. So last week, we had a conversation about Gundam. That conversation went really well. I appreciate the folks that watched and subscribed from there. It's definitely a brand that I think a lot of people are going to be taking a look at this year, and I sort of went over that. So if you didn't get a chance to catch that video, I would encourage you to go back and take a look at that one. It was good, and I had my really good employee, Matt, with me to talk about that. Today's all about distribution. Distribution, in a lot of cases, is the reason for and the solution to all of my problems as a retailer. They're essential, and they're a blessing, and they're a curse. So we're going to focus on the positives in the front end, and then just like every other time I do one of these videos, we're going to talk about the challenges on the back end. At this point, I still do about 70 to 75% of my ordering is through distribution, so they are very good at taking pre-orders. So we do a lot of pre-orders. We put orders in very, very early. So still the majority of the totality of everything that I bring into the store itself is a distributor, and then I'll count sub-distribution in that as well. So if I were to break up the buckets and stuff, direct ordering from producers is a little bit lower for sure. So things that they do really well, wide product access. So if I take a look at the distributors that I use that are main distributors for me. So currently I work with 4 out of the main 5. I work with PhD, Alliance, ACD, GTS, and I refuse to work for Southern. I won't open an account with them. I know there's plenty of people out there that have great luck with them. There was a time a couple of years back when some not great things happened on the business side of things between myself and them, and some refusals on their part. And I happened to be at a Gen Con meeting with a whole bunch of other high-end retailers as well. And what was funny about that conversation was we were going table to table to table, and somehow the conversation came up. And inside of the same 6-month period of time, all of us had closed our accounts with Southern Hobbies. So aside from my disaster that I had working with them, they had a couple of them as well that were even worse than what mine were. So I felt confident and I felt solid about that decision. The other distributors that I use for a wide variety of reasons, and a lot of times it's access to product. Some of them carry the same stuff, some of them don't. The other thing that they do is streamlined ordering, right? So most of them have websites. All of them can accept CSVs. All of my ordering that I do is done through my point of sale system. It generates a CSV. That CSV goes out to my distributor based on who I have set for my point of sale based on my primary distributor. It gets sent to that primary distributor. Whatever's left over that they don't fill sort of gets daisy chained around to the other ones until everybody's sort of had a crack at what it was I wanted for supply. Typically, those primary distributors are set based on pricing. It's not always that way. There's some distributors that have fantastic pricing, but they never have stock on anything. So the pricing doesn't matter if I can't actually stock the product. So there have been times when I've flipped my primary distributor based on another distributor having better supply, regardless of the conversations that I've had. So you're not getting anything additional from me because you've decided to mark something down lower than your competitors if you don't have anything to sell me. And sometimes it's because they have their prices as low as they are. Most of them support small publishers. So there's de facto exclusives that they have just based on legacy distribution goes to different conventions, different shows. They work with different publishers in different ways. So it allows me access to be able to sample smaller publishers that maybe a direct order wouldn't necessarily work for. So all of them have sort of a different cache of these indie publishers or indie producers that they handle distribution for that maybe the other distributors don't. So their catalog is varied, which again, pluses and minuses on that, having to call a bunch of different places to gobble up a bunch of these small guys, which is the other reason why sub-distribution feels like it's grown a lot. As far as sub-distributors go, I use occasionally, but not as often anymore. I use Bridge, but the reason that I don't use Bridge is because I use Fair, and Fair has started to collect a lot of my dollars recently. Studio 2 and Indie Press Revolution are the sub-distributors that I use regularly. Promotions and events, a handful of different promotions and events that we can only get through distribution. Now with a lot of the publishers sort of moving into direct-to-consumer business, they also have direct-to-retail business, which makes perfect sense. If you're sending a box to a mailbox, you can certainly send a box to a retail store. There was a long period of time when distribution was sort of the only way to get organized play kits because the majority of the ordering was going through them. So there's promotional things that they can get in that other places don't have. Racks, different paint racks, different assortments of product. Sometimes they have launch SKUs and different things like that. A chunk of promotion / marketing / extra stuff comes from them too. I got a rack the other day from somebody that I wasn't even expecting because I had gotten some threshold and it just came in, which some of them are good and some of them are not. Relationship value is the other good. I have a really good relationship with 3 out of the 4 distributors that I work with. I have a reasonable relationship with all of my reps to a very good relationship with some of them. Some of my reps, specifically my primary distributor reps, I have a really good relationship with. My relationship with the upper portion of GTS isn't great. And part of the reason why it isn't great is there was a time many years ago, we got into some discourse with regard to certain product lines that they were carrying that they were exclusive with. And the challenge was that there was a distributor that I was ordering from. We're about 2 hours from the Canadian border here. And there was a product line that I was ordering from a distributor in Canada. And they had come to me and said that I was forced to now order from them, which absolutely wasn't the case. So there was some other stuff that we had disagreements on as far as, I'll just call it business operations and doing things. And I feel like there's definitely times where my account has been allocated in ways where, based on the volume of ordering that I was doing with them, were they to compare me to the catalog of other retailers that they have, I felt like my allocation numbers were hit harder than what somebody based on the volume that I was doing should have been hit with. So in turn, I moved that business to somebody else, which is perfectly fine. And it's well within their reason to decide who they want to sell product to and how much they want to sell it for. That was the good. We went about 9 minutes there, guys. So it's like 30% of the show, right? So I feel like we're in good shape. The bad, stock issues is always the bad. If a distributor doesn't have product for me to buy, they can't ship it to me, then they're not really fulfilling their role, which is me being able to buy a small, wide sampling of products at the amount that I want to be able to put it in my shelf so that I could then sell it. Hot items are frequently out of stock for two reasons, really. Especially in the board game, role-playing, and miniature space, they will frequently only order to what they have pre-orders for with very little additional stock. A lot of times the buyers over there don't either have the ability to extend more than what their initial order is, the guts, the inclination, the ability to be able to buy. So what happens is, in those cases, I end up having to be the buyer and I have to buy as a distributor would buy. And the number of times when I've talked to publishers about what I bought initially from distribution, and they have told me, you have purchased more than this distributor or that distributor did of that entire product. And it's a product that's just, it's on fire. It's exceedingly hot. Now, I'd like to be able to say to them, well, the reason why you don't know how to pick, or you're not picking well, or you don't have the ability to pick well, is because your catalog is so wide. The problem with that is my catalog now here at this store and the other store that I run in Minnesota is exceedingly wide as well. There's a lot of stuff that we carry. We carry similar amounts of SKUs at this point. When I was a smaller retailer and we were selling less stuff, that was certainly the case. But at this point, between everything that I'm ordering from the publishers that they have, the stuff that I'm ordering from the publishers that they don't have, and the stuff that I'm ordering for crowdfunding, I am ordering the same size catalog. I'm doing the same level of evaluations, and the best part about it is buying product is not my only job. I'm also running a business. I also have employees. I also have to work with marketing and events and things like that. Yet I still find the way to make the time to have the relationships with these people, to understand what games are important, to be able to take a look at what information is out there from the publishers, from the community, be able to heat test this stuff and order. Do I get it right every time? No, I don't. But it's very, very rare when I don't have product longer than what distribution has if it's on fire. Pricing challenges is the other one. There's just variable wholesale prices that people have. It's not streamlined across the board at all. So once a year I do this exercise where I take, I don't know, the list gets bigger every year, but it's about 200 SKUs. And I put the SKU out and I send an email to all of my distribution reps and I ask them, give me your pricing on all of these things. I build an Excel spreadsheet. I take a look at who I have set in my system as primary and who's secondary and who's tertiary, and I'll make adjustments real time on the fly. The only time it gets adjusted back is, like I said, if somebody is consistently out of stock, it does not matter what their price is on that product. They are not a good supplier for me, and then I'll remove that and I'll go back to primary. but I set based on price to begin with. So that exercise happens. The variability in pricing is pretty significant when you look at certain lines, and it doesn't make a whole ton of sense. So if there's retailers that are out there that are looking at what they're buying and where they're going, yes, there are pricing tiers that are baked into distribution. Yes, those pricing tiers are based on the volume that you're ordering for. I'm hyper-focused on certain things with certain distributors. With other distributors, I sprinkle around a little bit more, or I use them for backfill. Every single distributor that I have publishers that I order primary stock from. And then when they're out of that stuff and I need something day two, the place that I don't go anymore is not distribution, it's to publishing. Because any publisher worth their salt at this point also has direct to retail. And the reason why they have direct to retail is everything that I'm talking about dealing with regard to not being able to get hot stock on day two, regardless of what I pre-ordered on day one, because everybody else figured it out in the weekend, they didn't take that stock from publishing either. So when I approach publishing and I say, hey, can I get some more of this? Whether it's SETI from Check Games or name the other flavor of the week hot game that just came out, they have the stock. They tried to sell it to distribution. There's a whole ton of distributors out there that missed, or that didn't order enough, or ordered really lightly, or whatever the case may be. Nobody is taking a risk on this stuff anymore. It's board games, it's miniature games, it's role playing. They're all tight. So what happens is on pre-order, anybody can take an order. All of them take my order. I get 99% of the stuff that I try to order, I get when it comes to those style products. Very rarely do I get caught in a board game, or never on a role-playing game, never on a miniatures game. It's always on CCGs. So pricing challenges, stock issues, minimum orders can be a little tricky, especially now that I'm working with Fair more often and I'm buying more stuff off of Fair. And there's a bunch of things that Fair has built into the back end where you get these discount threshold tiers and free shipping for this and that and the other thing. And Fair has sort of created an ordering game platform where I can play around with numbers, and they actually give me motivation to order more than what I would normally order by giving me better pricing, which I know is a strange concept, but it works because they've gamified that sort of shopping experience by adding a bunch of different perks based on what they're doing, working with the publishers that they're working with and the different producers. And it's effective. It's effective because I like another 5 points if I can get there for another $500 or whatever the case may be. So shipping costs have changed. Obviously, they are more expensive than when I started with, but shipping in general is more expensive than when I started with. Shipping is something that I think, if anything, distribution should charge more. Distribution's been way too giving as far as what their shipping rates are for shipping us product based on the cost of shipping things now. Like I complained the first time somebody did a $5 cost for shipping, but it was more because they said that was the cost to have the warehouser pick the product, which that should be built into your business model. It's certainly built into my business model here. I don't charge an extra fee for somebody to go over to the shelf to grab it, to give it to customer to buy it at the register. So their phrasing kind of sucked, and they could have done something a little bit better than that, but they should definitely be charging more for shipping. Communication gaps. It's coming up. Gamma's on its way, right? We're all going to get there. And the number of times I'm going to have this conversation that is, I can't get a hold of your product, publisher. Well, it's at distribution. It's not at distribution. Distribution. Why don't you have the product? The publishers didn't send it. Yes, they did. It's in your warehouse. No, it's not. Oh, maybe it is. Oh, you're right. It's at a different distributor. The communication and where product is and where inventory is in our ecosystem is such complete bullshit. Nobody knows where their boxes are. They don't know how many they have. They don't know where they're located. They can't give me an accurate answer. I should be able to talk to any publisher and say, hey, I need this game. And they should be able to go, yep, distribution has this much. And I don't give a shit if it's in Washington State and I need to pay for shipping. I live and die based off the games that are on my shelves. If I can't get those games on my shelf, I'm dying. So I will pay to have extra things in. It's a value proposition that I'm giving my customers when I have product that they don't have. This is the reason why so many of them are turning to direct to retail selling, because I can order a case. I have no problem ordering a half a pallet or whatever I need to do to be able to get a hold of that thing that I can't normally get a hold of. But communication from publishing through distribution to retail, the amount of times that it can get botched or it becomes this awful telephone game is pretty significant. Most of the time when I'm having an A to B conversation with the publisher, the information is accurate, or at least it's accurate based on what they understand, and they can then forensically get to the bottom of whatever my question is. But the number of times where they've called up and distribution just hasn't processed the thing, whatever that thing was, because it's either deprioritized or they don't have the workload to be able to do that, or it's another 15 CCGs that's released this week. So That's the thing that's going to get on the truck, because for whatever reason, we're this far into this industry, and the only thing that has real release dates at all that anybody cares about is still CCGs. Board games don't, miniature games don't. Role-playing certainly doesn't. GW has release dates that are adhered to because they're the only ones that are shipping the product. So communication gaps, it's almost a joke, because most of the time, nobody has any idea what the hell's going on. Over-reliance. This was something that I had a big problem with early on. I had my eggs in a singular basket and then became overly reliant on one distributor. The challenge with distribution is they have an over-reliance towards the same thing, which is certain publishers. So certain publishers get treated one way, and typically that's based on sales. But when they start to crater, they have a really hard time being able to readjust and to audible into whatever the next best thing is. Because again, this goes back to like being able to go and evaluate product and pick the thing that's going to matter. I'm not saying at all that these distributors do not have teams of buyers that set up hours and hours and hours and hours and hours of meetings at every single show. Nuremberg was just the other day, and we're going to have Gamma, and they're going to have us, and they're paying to bring all the people, and they're going and they're looking at the game, and there's a prototype and there's a pitch, and we're in this. It's not that they're not spending the time doing it. It's just they're not as good at doing it, and or their purse strings are held too tightly, whether it's Pokemon dollars or Magic dollars or Lorcana dollars that they're chasing. They buying outside of the parameters of those things is really difficult and really challenging. And what's going to happen because of this is game stores are going to stop selling board games in general. Now, there's a couple of reasons other than the fact that distribution is not really good at ordering them. It's the direct-to-consumer sales that publishing is doing to sort of make up for the loss of brick-and-mortar sales, that partially due to the loss of distribution buying, and then fulfilled by Amazon as well. So as those dollars start to erode on all these board game titles, and the big-ass clunky board game thing is on our shelf and it takes up a whole ton of space, and we're losing dollars from big box and mass market, we're losing dollars on FBA, we're losing dollars on D2C, whether they're using a promo to sell the thing or not. At the end of the day, if distribution doesn't have it, we're losing all these different sales from all these different places because they've decided that distribution isn't a place that's buying enough product for them to sell through to tabletop. Eventually what's going to happen, if you play this tape all the way through, is they're going to stop carrying board games. You're doing really well right now with your sales and your direct-to-consumer stuff. That stuff will slow when you don't have the recruitment tools that is 3,500 or 3,600 retailers showing off that game for you in their retail stores. Has less to do with distribution specifically than it does to do with publishing and publishing's attitude towards retail right now. But the reality of it is distribution plays a role in there, because distribution is not taking from them what they need them to take to sell to their tabletop customers. Some of that has to do with the fact that publishing went really, really wide, and they've decided they're going to fart out a game every 15 minutes. Let's be a little bit more streamlined, a little bit more specific with what we're going to do, and a little more surgical with our catalog, and some of that would end up going down. And I talked about poor buying decisions. The ugly. So the good, the bad, the ugly. We got 7 minutes and 40-ish seconds for this. Allocation wars, right? We are in allocation wars. And what do I mean by allocation wars? Well, any retailer and any distributor knows exactly what I'm talking about. And if you looked at the thumbnail that had the One Piece box on it, and you looked at the thumbnail that had the Pokemon box on it, you know exactly what I'm talking about, which is high demand products, often unequally distributed, creating frustration and inequity. Every distributor does this differently. All of us are selling every single box of Pokemon that we get. All of us are selling every single box of One Piece that we get. I'm allocated all kinds of different numbers from all kinds of distributors using all kinds of different methods. I would be okay with that if what I took a look at with my distributors was whoever I spent the most with, I got the highest allocation and then I went down. But that's not happening. There's different rungs and there's different people jumping in and they're doing different things. My concern in this, and I'm not a tinfoil hat guy, I'm a business realist type of guy. How much of these allocations that retail is dealing with are due to the fact that these distributors are selling that product in the gray market? Sure, it's against terms of service. How many publishers that are producing those games actually go in and audit those books and take a look at where they're selling, and they're not selling it to somebody that owns a game store, that's somebody that's related to or a spouse of somebody that's part of a distributorship, that has an online store that they're selling stuff out the back door for, and they're making an extra 30 points on it or whatever they're making, even more than that. Because if it's allocated product, you're selling above MSRP too. So you're running extra juice on that stuff, but it's not coming to retail. It's going out the back door and they're selling it that way. And I think it's happening more and more and more and more every day. Do I have the books? Do I have the proof? Can I look at that specifically and call out certain things and say, this is where this is happening here and there? No, it's really difficult to do that. It's hard to forensic that thing back. There's a bunch of allegations that have been out there. People have talked about it before. Some of the distributors drop ship stuff directly. That's a form of that. There's all kinds of different ways where these allocation things never end up getting to us. Now, some of the publishers will put in surveys that say something like, how many of these things did you get from your distributor? So they're sort of trying to triangulate that data. I don't think they have enough of us buying into filling out those surveys and sending it to them to give them an accurate forecast of realistically what's going on. Predatory practices, that's a whole nother thing. There's distributors that will sell in all sorts of different ways. They will sell to retailers that aren't really retailers. They'll sell to pizza shops, so they'll sell to other locations that are not necessarily brick and mortar retailers. They undercut local stores. They're just doing it because it's a hobby, because they have a son that happens to play this game or that game or the other thing, and they throw it on the shelves. They're not a game store. Quality control. Some distributors are worse than others. My backdrop sort of shows you what the floor looks like in my warehouse every single day. It's just these packaging and boxing and that sort of stuff. The number of orders that come through our door where there's something missing, something damaged, something messed up that happened on the order is significant. I have an entire team of people in receiving that I pay to manage those invoices, to make sure we get those credits, to make sure that the games come back, or if they were damaged or destroyed, we have somebody to do that. But it's a ton of time. Like, people are not packaging boxes correctly. If you want to know who the best person is in terms of distribution, shipping product to get it to me without damages and without inaccuracies, it's ACD. ACD is a distributor. You typically are going to pay more per product with them than any other distributor out there. But what you get is you get a sales team that is probably the best educated sales team en masse for all of distribution, in terms of were you to take a test across the board for all of the distributor reps in that particular distribution place, who would know the most about product? It's ACD. Their warehouses are the most accurate, and I get the least amount of damages and the least amount of problems, and I order from a bunch of different warehouses that they have, so it's not like it's just one warehouse happens to be the golden goose of everything that they have. But the frequency with which I get damages and the inaccuracies from ACD is lower than anybody else in the industry. That's not to say that other people don't do a good job. I'm saying that they are the best. And sometimes when you want the best, when it comes to that sort of stuff, whatever I'm saving on those products that I'm investing into my employees that have to go and hunt things down and do quality control is money that I lost. So regardless of what the price was, I end up having to pay for it in the end when I have to spend time chasing that shit down. Market saturation. Market saturation is sort of what I talk to with regard to selling out to gray market stuff, where you're dumping product to get out from underneath it. And what happens is it undercuts the cost of a whole bunch of different things. There's a ton of different accounts that distributors have that they sell to that are outside of the realm of brick and mortar retail store. Those places that get facilitated that are just there to liquidate before we necessarily have a product that's gone south definitely harm our ecosystem in terms of products are now available for cheaper than they should be. We didn't have enough chance to clear out our inventory. Nobody's communicating with us that this is happening, of course, because they don't want us to undercut as well, because they want to get out from underneath whatever that pallet was or that sort of thing. So, that's a twofold situation. That's distribution over ordering in that case, and that's probably publishing over pushing or overproducing in that case, which is another whole entire episode of issues. Inconsistency in terms of policies. I mean, this isn't any different than a retail store is as well. Some of the distributors are better than others with regard to how their return policy and their support policy and how quickly they get back money that we invested that there's a damaged product that shows up for. That's sort of a value proposition depending on who you're dealing with. I can tell you, if you're a retailer out there that's a smaller account than what ours is, there's no streamlined, like I don't have a red phone that I pick up to call to get my refund faster than you do. I'm in the queue the same way as everybody else. So that doesn't matter on size of account. It's not like Delta, when I fly so many miles, they give me first class or they give me an accelerated customer service phone. Now, that said, I can talk to every single person that runs these distributorships. I have a relationship with all of them, so I can get on the telephone with them and dial them up, and they could get on it faster, but I still have to go through the queue. It still has to go through the funnel or whatever, and I don't tend to exercise my relationships in that way. That's sort of my episode on distribution. Distribution is a really, really critical part of my business. I think if I take a look at innovation in this industry and I take a look at the amount of innovation in the last 20 years that retail has done to sort of survive and how we've dealt with e-commerce and mass market and all these other avenues of selling that's come online, we've all had to get better at our job. If I take a look at the games that we're selling and what the publishers are doing with the games and how beautiful they are and the value in those boxes, they're absolutely tremendous. Outside of some distributors improving their websites and doing different things like that, the basics of it is still them putting stuff in boxes and then shipping it out. A lot of times they'll sell you on an idea that their sales team can do marketing, and they can't. Very, very rarely do I have a sales team member come to me and give me a product suggestion. They'll say that something I ordered a little light on, or maybe I should order more of that. But for the most part, that just doesn't exist. And whether or not that's because their heads in the trenches or they're just focused on their thing, or it's not something that they're an expert in. Like most of my sales reps have some category that they're an expert in. But if I talk to them about anything else, it's just a SKU number. So I have to sort of do all that work. So again, distribution is the reason for and the solution to all of my problems and most of the game industry's problems as well. And the challenges in here are things that I hope that they take a look at, trying to find some way to adjust. So that's the show today. Good to see everybody. We'll see you next week. Happy gaming.